GSMC Baseball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. First, we'll be covering Zack Wheeler and the Phillies, talking about an extension, what will happen there, and what are my thoughts on it. Next, we'll be talking about Jordan Montgomery and the reports coming out that him going back to Texas is unlikely. This is a big shift in the free agent market, so we will be talking about it. Next, we'll be talking about some injured free agents and where they're going to sign, and if they've signed yet, and how is the adjustment going to look for them in their career since they were hurt last year. And finally, just recapping some more minor news that maybe didn't deserve its own segment, but I still thought was interesting to talk about. So now, before we get to that, I would please ask you to like and follow the show. We get a number of questions from viewers, so to make sure that I see your question and that it gets read in the air, I please ask that you use the donation link, streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Just put your question at the top of the list so that I see it, and it really does help the show. So thank you very much. All right, so let's get into the first segment here we have, and that is Zack Wheeler. Him and the Phillies are talking about an extension, and I think it's really interesting. Yeah. Let's just go over quickly Zack Wheeler. I think we all know who he is, but just a quick refresher. Since joining Philly, he has been one of the better players in baseball and pitchers as well. Just a better player and pitcher. I mean, he's been really incredible since coming to Philly. You look at him since going to Philly, he has a 3.06 ERA, which is just incredible. He's been top 6 in Cy Young twice with them, finished top 2 in his second year, and just overall been the ace that Phillies needed in these past few deep playoff runs. Him and Aaron Nola have made a great ace tandem, and with Nola back, being re-signed this offseason, I guess they want to do the same with Wheeler. So why this makes sense? I think it's pretty clear why it makes sense. He's on an expiring contract, and with how good he's been with Philly, you definitely want to extend him. Yeah, even though he is getting a little older, he's still, again, been one of the better pitchers in baseball. He said he loves it in Philly. Philly fans love him. He's just been really consistent joining Philly. The injury issues he had with the Mets before the Phillies have seemingly just went away. So he's really found a home in Philadelphia, and I think it just makes sense for both sides to have an extension and get this done. If you don't get this extension done, there are a few teams you could look at next year who probably offer him more and maybe pry him away. I mean, just one team, like his old team, the Mets, they have money to spend next offseason with Max Scherzer coming off the books and Justin Verlander possibly coming off the books. They didn't really have an ace. They could do a fun little storyline of bringing him back. But, there's other teams. You got teams just like the big teams, like the Dodgers, the Padres maybe wanting to spend again. Just getting Zack Wheeler locked up and extended right now is a really good thing for the Phillies, and it's good for him and it's good for the team that they both want to talk extension, they both are interested in extension, and they both want Zack to stay in Philly. Looking at the Phillies right now, just in 2024, what their outlook is and what they're going to do. I mean, right now, I'd probably say the second best team in that division. You're just not really going to catch the Braves. Even so, I'd probably say that they're overall probably going to be the 5th seed in the NL. You look at teams right now, definitely better than them. You have the Braves, you have the Dodgers, and that's kind of it. I mean, they are unfortunately in a really rough division, so they're probably going to finish with the 4 or 5 seed, and that's just how baseball works. But Braves are absolutely better than them. Dodgers are absolutely better than them, but that's not really saying anything too crazy because we know both those teams as kind of the juggernauts in the NL this year and probably for years to come as well, and they also have been juggernauts. It's not like they're just coming onto the scene. You could look at the Diamondbacks as better. I probably would look at the Diamondbacks as better right now, but I don't think it's definite. I think the Diamondbacks really added on to a really great season last year. Obviously, they made the World Series, so it's kind of hard to do better than that. Really, only one team did better than that, and that was the Rangers because they beat them. The problem with the Phillies is they just haven't done much this offseason. They've re-signed Nola, which is good. They signed Spencer Turnbull, fine depth move, I guess. Now, re-signing Wheeler, that would be a great move. I want to make that very clear. A great, great move. But at the same time, you kind of need to do more. And we're going to talk about it in our next segment, actually. But, there are still some free agents left in the market. Still some pitchers, guys like Blake Snell, guy like Jordan Montgomery, people who have been mentioned with the Phillies. You could even pull off a trade for someone like Edward Cabrera, who's been in a lot of rumors recently, specifically with the Pirates. But maybe the other Pennsylvania team could jump in and, want him more. Um, yeah, I mean, you don't really have the assets for a trade, I would think, but at the same time, Dave Dombrowski knows how to get trades done. He knows how to get things done. He's a very good general manager. So, yeah, I think they needed to do more this offseason. It's still not done the offseason. I want to make that very clear. So they definitely could. I mean, they signed Bryce Harper during spring training a few years ago, and that's, I'd say, gone pretty well. Um, so yeah, I mean, just looking at the future of the Phillies right now, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, I'd say. Yeah. Extending Zack Wheeler would definitely make this team much better long term. Now you have Zack Wheeler, you have Aaron Nola anchoring the top of that rotation for the long term, for not just 2024 and 2025, but 2026, 2027, and beyond. Both are on the older side, of course, because they are going to hit free agency. Wheeler his second time, but at the same time, they're still really good. And Nola, the one thing you can count on Nola with is innings. Nola has always thrown a lot of innings, always been very consistent with the Phillies, and that's why his contract made sense. Um, he didn't have the best season last year, but the Phillies are going off track record. They're going off what he's meant to this organization and um, what he's done for them in the past and what they believe he can do in the future. Zack Wheeler, I mean, yeah, again, I'm going to say it again, but he's been so good since I'm in a Philly. He really has been probably top five pitcher in baseball since coming to Philly. There was a lot of question marks about his contract, but a lot of people said, you always had untapped potential with the Mets. And the Mets at that time weren't the most competent organization. They're still kind of not the most competent organization, but things are getting better. I have hope. Um, and the Phillies, they really got that out of him. They got the pitches that he was missing with the Mets out of him. They got just what he was supposed to be with his top as a top prospect with the Giants. And he was involved in a big trade with the Mets. They traded a franchise cornerstone in Carlos Beltran for him. And now this isn't to say that Wheeler was a total bust with the Mets. He was very good. But at the same time, he could have been better. And a lot of people expect him to be the guy with the Mets that he is with Philly right now. So, sorry. Guy who really is just consistently in Cy Young voting. Is consistently considered one of the better pitchers in baseball. Is a guy who you look at as a true ace, a guy you could go out on the mound every fifth day and say, hey, you know what? We're going to win today. We feel very confident we're going to win today. You know why? Because our ace is out there. That to me is what an ace is. And that's what Zack Wheeler's been in Philly. Now, again, he wasn't a disappointment in the Mets. He wasn't a disappointment in Queens with the Mets at all. But he could have been better, like I said, and he could have done more. But sometimes it's just about organizational fit. It's about where a player feels most comfortable. And obviously, he felt more comfortable in Philadelphia and New York. So I'm glad they got that out of him. It's just, it's how baseball works. You can look at a lot of examples over the years of this happening. So yeah, just again looking at where the Phillies are in the NL, I think they're probably the third or fourth best team. I'd go Braves. I go Dodgers, Braves, then Diamondbacks slash Phillies, Phillies slash Diamondbacks. I think both teams are pretty equal to each other. The one thing I will say about the Diamondbacks is, they did add to their team. They added Eduardo Rodriguez. They added Eugenio Suarez. Really good additions. They added Jock Peterson. They could still add more. They're looking for a right-hand platoon bat to go with Jock Peterson. Maybe look at a guy like Tommy Pham, who was there last year, of course, who you could pair with Jock. So yeah, sorry, in the end, I do think this ends up getting done. It just makes too much sense not to happen. Look at where Wheeler is right now. He's older. This is probably his last chance for a payday. He probably wants to stay somewhere more comfortable. The Phillies, of course, want to extend him. Why? Because he's one of the better pitchers in baseball, and he plays for their team, so it just makes too much sense. So I think this is something that should be definitely looked at as a strong possibility. If I had to guess, I would probably say in the 4-year range, probably around 35 to 40 million. It just makes sense for him to get such a high number. He's so good. He means so much to that organization, so much to that team, so much to that fan base as well, really. Um, so yeah, it just makes too much sense. It's something that has made sense really the entire offseason. I don't know why Philly didn't do it sooner or didn't engage with it sooner, with the lack of moves they have made. So yeah, just looking over the NL East real quick because we're talking about the Phillies. The Braves, I think, still need a little bit more pitching. Reynaldo Lopez, Chris Sale, both fine, but I think both have a lot of question marks. Chris Sale with the injuries, Reynaldo Lopez with he's becoming a new position entirely, which is it's a big deal. Um, Phillies, again, I think they need to add more. We're going to talk about this in our next segment, actually. So I don't know if I should talk about it a little more, but a little bit. But Jordan Montgomery makes a lot of sense. Blake Snow makes a lot of sense. I'm going to talk about it next. So, well, yeah. Mets. Mets, I think, are good right now. They still have some needs, obviously, like I think a full-time DH. I'm just not a believer in Mark Vientos or DJ Stewart as being a starter. Jorge Soler's gone. I don't know if I would sign JD Martinez because I'm not sure how he's going to perform away from the Dodgers because he has his hitting guru there who's really helped him throughout his career. It might sound stupid, but it's worked in the past, so I'm not going to doubt him. Um, Next, you have um, you have the Marlins who are just kind of in a weird crossroads. We don't really know what the hell they're doing, but maybe they'll be good. Maybe they'll surprise us all after making zero moves and just trading for Nick Gordon and Calvin Faulkner. That they'll be good. They're run by a Rays guy now, so maybe they'll inherit the Rays magic. Maybe the Rays magic will come from the other part of Florida to this part of Florida. Um, Nationals, we know what the Nationals are. They're rebuilding. They're young. That's kind of it. Um, yeah, nothing else really to say about the Nationals. Um, but maybe if their young players can get better, can really improve, and become building blocks, they hope. Mackenzie Gore, C.J. Abrams, guys in the minors like uh, who's gonna who's gonna come up in the future. They can be really good. So yeah, I think that makes sense. I think just a little NL East preview there. So we're talking about the Phillies. So that's what I think about the Phillies. That's what I think about um, just what's going to go on with them, what's going on with the Wheeler extension, why it makes too much sense not to happen. So yeah, so that was our first segment. We're going to take a little break here, but next we're going to be talking about Jordan Montgomery. Just some recent rumors going on with him, and we'll talk about it next. So thanks.